The memories that you've left with me will always be with me forever and ever. Especially Sachin.
Well, hello and welcome. It's been almost a year. 16th November 2013 was Sachin Tendulkar's last test at the Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai. Today we are looking at a book that's emerged from this. It's called Final Test Exit Sachin Tendulkar, written by Dilip D'Souza. Ayaz, Memon, what do you think of the book?
I haven't read it as yet. I know about the book because Dilip has spoken to me about it. And I think it's great. I mean, within a year to come out with the book, from what I understand, from what Dilip has told me and, buzz going around, it is about Sachin's last test. But it is more than just the last test. I think it's to do with more aspects of Indian cricket.
Right. Okay, let's hear it from Dilip. Tell us, what is this book about? What were you trying to bring together in writing this book?
Okay. Thanks for doing this, by the way. I mean, I really appreciate it. But so the book is, I was watching the last test. I was there at the stadium last year, and it just struck me that there's a book in this, and to talk about the ball by ball, about what happened, but also use that as a vehicle to talk about larger issues in cricket. So in a sense, it's maybe in a nutshell, it's about what is it with Indian cricket in these 25 years of Sachin, in a time of Sachin Tendulkar. And I try to answer that in different ways, the coming of the IPL, commercialization of cricket, the power of the BCCI. And I've tried to do that all as a fan, I don't have any inside information or connection. I just want to see how does the fan look at the game in these 25 years.
Okay.
That was my idea.
Right, Dilip. So about the inside information, you're a neighbor to the man, so presumably you have more inside information than a lot of others do. Anyway, so questions coming in, Dilip. Let me. The first one is: should Sachin have retired after the England Test series, which we lost? Asks Enthu.
Well, I think he, I don't know how to answer that properly because in some ways he should decide when he should retire. But I really think that he was almost unable to take that decision in a level-headed way, I feel, because there's so much pressure on him to break all kinds of records and keep on breaking them. So I think if you look at his last 2 years, they were fairly mediocre by his own standards, his batting record. And I think, therefore, if he should have retired after his last Test century, which was, I think, a couple of years before he retired, the beginning of 2012, if I'm not mistaken.
And right. So let me put that question to Ayaz. Ayaz, I remember that fascinating piece you wrote. I don't know, did it appear in Bombay Times, where you talked about you saw Sachin jumping over
as a 17-year-old, yes.
As a 17-year-old off Marine Drive, right? Yeah. So you obviously tracked Tendulkar as well, very closely. Do you agree that he should have could have retired earlier?
Govind, in hindsight, vision is 2020. Correct. So we could always say he could have retired after the World Cup. He was on top of the world, having won the World Cup. It's a very difficult call for somebody in Sachin's place, if you're a phenomenon like that, to take. You're playing well. There's so much that rides on you. There's so much ambition perhaps he still had, which was unfulfilled. It's difficult to say what motivates these guys to go on. I mean, Michael Jordan retired and came back. Bjorn Borg did the same. Ricky Ponting, a lot of people believe now, could have retired maybe 18 months, 2 years before he did, and so on and so forth. I think, yes, if you look at it in terms of a kind of a linear career, his last 2 years compared to his first 22 years were, pretty ordinary.
Right.
But whether he should have retired after the World Cup, you always feel maybe I've got one more year in me. Right. Let me give it a shot.
Right.
If it works out, it's fine.
A quick, and we're going to talk a little more about the lessons of retirement, the last test and all that. Your experiences from the day, Ayaz, 16 November 2013?
Well, one of the questions being asked was, will there ever be a Sachin Tendulkar? Perhaps not. But life goes on. Sachin Tendulkar came almost immediately after Sunil Gavaskar retired. I think what we have to understand is, and I don't know how Dilip has addressed it in his book, that he's left behind a huge legacy and a volume of, or a body of work, which may remain unmatched for a very, very long time. And that's what he'll be remembered by.
And what would be the top three according to you? The unmatched. What's going to be a tough one to beat?
I think the biggest is not in terms of records, is the kind of sway he held over the Indian psyche.
Okay.
I haven't seen anyone, certainly not in cricket, apart from Don Bradman, perhaps.
Right.
But for a smaller country,
right.
This is for 1 billion plus people for 24 years. They just swore by this man, and that's a huge. It's like carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders.
Right. Okay. So you're putting more importance on that.
Yeah.
We've also got Sunandan Lele, a sports journalist who's been very close to Sachin Tendulkar and tracked him for all these years. Sunandan, as you look back at these, I mean, we've almost completed a year since Sachin retired. What are your thoughts?
Hard to believe, because for the simple reason, we were so used to watching Sachin Tendulkar bat. We were so used to watching Sachin Tendulkar walk on a cricket field. So it was a very tough decision, because let me put it this way, that he was member of all of our families. He was member of all Indian families. So it was hard for us to digest the retirement.
Right. And Sunandan, any memories from the last day that he played at Wankhede?
He had particularly told me that, especially for this match, you are not a journalist. You are not going to sit in the press box. You are going to sit in a special enclosure which we have conducted for the family members. And watching the last test match of Sachin Tendulkar with Ajit Tendulkar was a very, very special experience. And all of us were so emotional. I just cannot express in those things, my feelings in my words.
Ayaz? Very emotional. I mean, obviously, I don't think that's a question to ask, but how was it for you?
No, I think it was a very emotional send-off which he gave to the world. I mean, I can't think of anybody else who spoke like that at the end of his cricketing career. Certainly, maybe in other sports it's happened. And actually, I think he caught a lot of people completely unawares with the manner in which he spoke, the issues that he spoke about. So if you ask me what I remember most from that match, the final test which Dilip has written about, it's not about India beating the West Indies, which I thought was perhaps a foregone conclusion, or even perhaps Sachin making a half century, because maybe if he had made 100, that would have overshadowed everything else.
Right.
But his send-off, the speech that he gave at the end of the match, I think was completely unforgettable.
Right. Dilip, let me come back to you. I asked you in the beginning, what are the kind of themes that you were addressing? What's the one or two themes that stood out for you in your attempt to, unravel this final or the last match of Sachin Tendulkar?
Well, one thing which I think Ayaz just alluded to was that hardly anyone, I think, will remember that the West Indies were there and they lost that test. And so it is almost like a footnote to history, like there will be a quiz question 25 years from now, who was the team that Sachin played against? So, and I think in some ways that's a sad thing, because I really wish that it had been a top class opposition and playing Dale Steyn or Mitchell Johnson or somebody. That would have been something. So that's my one big takeaway I had from that match. The other thing was and again, I think Ayaz alluded to that, but the adulation, the test match wasn't really much about the cricket. It was about the atmosphere, the people shouting his name every time he touched the ball, whether he was batting, bowling, when he fielded, and then every time he came close to one of the stands, they would all pour down to see him. So there were all these things that were really, quite amazing for me to watch, and that was more interesting than the match itself. That also persuaded me that there's a book here to be written.
So, what was there a moment in all of this that's made you think that this is something that has to be captured in a book?
I start with, for example, and I'm so glad I got this photograph. There's a famous photograph of him entering, or actually just starting to enter the stadium when he comes into bat. And he's on top of some stairs and he's going to go down. He's just come out of the pavilion and he's going to go down. So there's the shot of he's up in the right-hand corner of the picture, and then there are all these people who come up in the stands and they're taking photographs of him, and all these hands reaching out to him. It's almost as if they're reaching out to their God, which in a sense, we all know that he's referred to as a God. So it's a beautiful photograph, and it was instantly famous, and it became the MCC photo of the year. And for me, that captured it. That was what the match was about. It was about Sachin's entry into that game, and that that last small chapter of his career.
Right. Okay. Navneeth joins us, also another cricketing enthusiast from Hyderabad. Navneeth, I don't know if you watched that last match, but anything that you want to pose to Dilip?
Well, I obviously did watch that match. That's probably one match that no cricket fan would miss. And
okay.
Dilip, I'm guessing you've covered this in your book as well. I'm looking forward to the read. But I think the walk back to the pitch right after everything was done, and just going down on his knees and giving the pitch one final kiss. I think it says a lot about the man himself, and what the game has given to him. And what is your take on that? And I'm guessing you've covered that in the book in some form for sure.
I mean, for me, actually, let me say that I thought that moment was more moving than his speech itself, because it, like you said, it really captured what the guy was about, captured what the game meant to him, and he seemed to just do it on a whim. I don't know if you thought about it, but he was almost back at the pavilion, and he suddenly said, "Look, I just want to go back." You could see him indicating to the people around him, saying, "I just want to go walk back alone." And he walked back alone to the middle of the pitch, and he didn't actually kneel down. As I remember, he just bent over, touched the ground, and then he touched his chest and his lips, and that was it. We came back. But it was such a to me that was that was the emotional well that came out there. Like I said, even more than his speech for me, because that said it all. About the kind.
Let me put the other question, Dilip, and Dilip, I'll just come back to you in a second. Ayaz, in some ways, was this overwhelmed by hype?
I mean, the match itself was, because if Sachin Tendulkar is retiring after 24 years and the kind of records that he had created, obviously there was a lot of hype. But I think at the end of the day, you have to see it from from the point of view of what he meant to cricket fans in India, or not just cricket fans, but all Indians. And then, of course, the cricketing universe at large. It's not always that you get a Tendulkar in your midst, a player of this caliber with this kind of consistency of performance. So, eras change. When Don Bradman retired, the entire England team stood there, applauded him into bat, and he got out for a blob, and they applauded him back. And all of England, so to speak, came to a standstill. Whether you were listening, you could only listen to it on the radio or, word of mouth. So, I mean, that kind of a send-off is given to very, very few people in the annals of sport. And we've seen it in front of our own eyes. So that's something that will remain with us forever.
Let me put that question to Sunandan as well. Sunandan, so what are the enduring lessons here from the way the Sachin retirement happened to other cricketers? I mean, to people. I mean, there is, what is it about the way Sachin perhaps handled this that we can take away?
I think we are talking about his records, his runs, his deeds on the cricket field. But let me tell you that for me, Sachin Tendulkar is not only a cricketer, but the way he conducted off the field as a human being, he is so humble, he is so grounded. All those things we must take into the credit, because that makes Sachin Tendulkar as a total package.
Okay, Dilip, and your impressions, including from your neighborly perspective.
My impressions of him leading the game.
Yeah, no. I mean, the question is, having how. I mean, what is the endearing legacy from this? I mean, the way he finished his career. Finished in the sense, culminated his career with that last match. How did he handle himself? I mean, so the legacy for future cricketers, for everyone.
I think one thing I hope that my book will get people to think about a little bit is the way we put this man on the pedestal. I think it is, personally, I think it's a disservice to him. He is my neighbor. He can never hope to step out of his house and go down the road to buy, go to the mochi or something. He can't do that, whereas I can. And that's because we've made him into this larger than life figure and almost a religious figure. And I think that also played a part in the test. All through the match, there were people saying, "Oh my God, maybe if he batted a little bit longer, he could get to 16,000 runs." What is the meaning of 16,000 runs when the man has already scored 15,500 or whatever? Would he be any better or worse in our memories if he scored those extra 100 runs, 100, 200 runs? But yet, there's always these demands on him that he has to fulfill. He has to get that 100th century. He has to get this one more thing, and we have to keep on pressuring him for it. I don't know. I mean, that bothered me. That bothered me about this whole legacy of Sachin, and I wish that it hadn't happened that way. I don't know how it could have happened differently, but I really wish it hadn't happened that way.
Sunandan, do you want to respond to what Dilip is saying?
I think we should not talk about what he did on the cricket field, because that all of us know that his records are very difficult. Someone to cross those records, because his runs are humongous. His records are unbelievable. But as I told you earlier, for me, it's not only about Sachin Tendulkar as a cricketer, because all other cricketers have to look forward and conduct themselves in such a way that they can create a legacy like Sachin Tendulkar or Rahul Dravid, and that is not going to be an easy task.
Right, and I think that's a good point. Ayaz, you want to add in there?
I just want to draw a comparison, and just to kind of not to counter, but just to kind of take a different point of view from, say, what Dilip has done. So, Jacques Kallis, an all-time great, retired a couple of months after Sachin did. And, in his home ground, in his home country, there were barely 4,000, 5,000 people watching that test match, which to me was a great shame, because here's one of the truly all-time greats. Statistically, Jacques Kallis would rank in the top 5, certainly for me. So, it also shows you, the craze, the fanaticism which prevails for cricket in India, and therefore also the amount of pressure that somebody like Sachin Tendulkar was subjected to. He was not just a sportsman going out and playing cricket. I think, that he had transcended that. Now, obviously, that brings him a lot of rewards and fame and money and all that, but there's also the other side of it, which is the amount of pressure you have to carry all your life. Dilip mentioned that in passing. He can't go out and buy a loaf of bread. Now that he's retired,
like any such celebrity would.
Correct. So you have to live, and you have been put on a pedestal. Now you better enjoy that pedestal. Otherwise, you had it.
Okay, great. So we've also got Abhishek Joshi joining us, who has kind of just called in. Abhishek, we're talking about Dilip's new book, which, as you know, comes just about a year or almost a year after he retired on November 16, 2013. What's your sense? What are your memories of that day, and what is the kind of memories or legacies that you have taken forward from then? Abhishek, I think Abhishek, can you hear me? Okay, we'll get Abhishek back. We've also got, we also spoke to a bunch of youngsters, as we always do in the city of Mumbai, and we asked them a few questions about, quiz questions about Sachin, and just to see whether people still remember as sharply as they did quite recently.
I think 2013 August.
2013.
2013.
2011.
2013.
2013.
2013.
West Indies.
West Indies.
Against West Indies.
South Africa.
South Africa.
Australia. West Indies. West Indies.
हाँ, 1 इनिंग के साथ इंडिया जीता था.
India. India won by an inning. India. India जीती. Between 50 to 100.
76.
47 runs. 77.
120 something.
84 था, I think so. 100 above. Somewhat around 70. No.
No.
No. No.
No.
He was run out. Catch out.
Catch out.
LPW. LPW. Bold हुआ. Bold.
51.
51. 51.
52.
52.
102.
100 centuries.
Right. Okay. So I think the most of the answers on the test centuries were more or less correct, which is 51, of course. But a lot of people seem to have already forgotten the circumstances surrounding the match.
Yeah. I think, I mean, look, at the end of the day, statistics is, most people remember 100 centuries and 51 test centuries.
Yeah.
I think that's really the crux. If you ask people how many runs Don Badman made, maybe a lot of people won't. But they'll say he didn't reach test average of 100. He finished 99.94.
And maybe it's also short-term memory, because a lot of people we've seen when we do our quizzes on CricketOMania tend to remember very sharply events of the recent past.
Recent past, yes.
Yeah, and we're talking about cricket specifically, including stats. Abhishek, are you there with us? Okay, no, we've not got Abhishek back. Dilip, let me come back to you. We're now trying to sort of put this whole thing together. What are the kind of favorite moments or innings that you've recorded in your book?
I can't say I have, because I was really just focusing on this one match. I will say that I towards the end I made this confession that I'm not, while I think Sachin's a great cricketer, I was never a fan of the way he batted.
Okay.
Just aesthetically. And I feel a little scared saying that, because what happened to Maria Sharapova a few months ago. But the thing is that I just preferred watching. I like the way Lara batted. I like the way Dravid batted. I like the way Mark Waugh batted. I just feel like those were more. I would turn on the TV anytime to watch those guys, and I would do the same for Sachin. It was just a matter of taste.
Okay.
But I mean, he had a fantastic number of great matches that he played. I think probably for me, the one that stands out is that I think it was a Chennai test against England, wasn't it, in 2008, where he scored a century. Ayaz will correct me on this. Am I getting that right, Ayaz?
26-11, yes, you're right, Dilip.
Yeah, that was a pretty fabulous century, and I mean, I think it really paved the. I think Sehwag had really paved the way, until Sachin took us to victory, if I'm not right, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, Abhishek, I know we've got you back. We've been talking about the Tendulkar match after which he retired. What's your favorite moment from either that match or anything before that? Okay, we've lost Abhishek again. Ayaz, your favorite Sachin innings?
Well, there are actually quite a few. I saw him make 100 at Perth, his second 100, I think, in Test cricket, which was, to me, it remains his best innings, because it was made on a fiery Perth track, and he was still a teenage batsman on his first tour of Australia, and he tamed the Australian pace attack in the company of tail-enders. The innings which Dilip mentioned, everybody used to say he doesn't make runs in the fourth inning, he doesn't lead India to wins. And there he was, leading India to victory with a fabulous century in the fourth innings. Okay. And then, of course, there was, I think, one of the landmark innings where, again at Chennai, where he hit Shane Warne out of the attack and made sure that Warne was never successful in India. Psychologically, he dented Shane Warne by kind of sweeping him and hitting him inside out over cover. So these are some of the innings that I remember. But what I remember most is actually a non-innings. It's before he went on his first tour. He was not selected for the West Indies tour in '89 because he was too young. They thought he would get hit by the fast bowlers there. And, we interviewed Tom Alter, and I interviewed him, and he actually said, if I had got hit, I would have learnt faster. So that was the mindset that he had when he was a teenager. Obviously, people evolve, players evolve, but it showed you really the core, at his core, what Tendulkar was all about.
And that's an excellent segue to the last question, effectively, which is that, has he really retired? I mean, which is a sort of trick question. But let me ask Sunandan this, and then I'm going to come to Dilip and Navneeth as well. Sunandan, what's your sense? Has he really retired?
My take is totally different, because I think more than Sachin Tendulkar, Ajit Tendulkar has retired. Because this guy, Ajit Tendulkar, who was a friend, philosopher, guide of Sachin Tendulkar, who was deeply engaged in Sachin's each and every inning, he got retired. But for me, as a Sachin Tendulkar friend, I would say his second innings is even more important. His first inning is over, but second inning has just started, and that is going to be for the social cause. So that inning is going to be more important.
Okay. Dilip?
Actually, I have to say I couldn't hear what Sunandan said at all, so I can't react to what he said.
Anyway, no. What's your sense? I mean, the question is, has he really retired? Is
No, he hasn't, because he's in all our minds. He's even today there was a record crowd outside his front entrance of his house today, and I don't know who all these people were, but that's the case every day. He's in all our minds all the time, and he's in our consciousness, and he probably will never go away, will never retire, or at least not for the next several years. He's going to be part of our life.
I don't think people like, or players or personalities like Sachin can retire. It just remains to be seen what kind of role he chooses for himself. Does he want to get into the media? I don't think so. He may get into it selectively. Does he want to be an administrator or a selector? He can do that, whenever he wants. Does he want a life in social welfare, like Vijay Merchant? His second innings was for the blind or the visually challenged, and he spent good 30-40 years on that path. So we've already seen that Sachin Tendulkar got a personal message from the Prime Minister of India saying, you must start cleaning up India along with me, Swachh Bharat. So it really remains to be seen. It's just been a year since he's retired.
Right.
I think he's trying to suss out his options or what he wants to do, his interests. He's also a member of the Rajya Sabha. Does he want an active life in politics? I doubt it. But it's going to be interesting to see how Sachin, kind of steers his career from here over the next maybe 2-3 years.
Right. So, Ayaz, we've got Bimal, another journalist who's just joined us, and he's also written a book. Bimal, I don't know if you caught the tail end of the conversation, and I hope you can hear me, and we will be able to hear you. Your thoughts on Sachin's legacy?
It's been immense, as we have been listening to what Ayaz has been saying, and no one knows better than Ayaz and Sunan, the likes of these guys who have covered Sachin's entire career. What I felt, because the last match we were covering, and I will tell you an interesting anecdote. We as a television journalist were not supposed to enter the stadium because of NBN restrictions with BCCI and all these things. But on that day, last day, we turned as a fan because we did not want to all this kind of hassles, and we entered the stadium as a fan. We bought the ticket and watched the entire match because we knew that this was a historic moment which will never come again in our life, and I'm glad that I will never forget that moment. That was the kind of feeling one can associate with when we were talking about Sachin Tendulkar.
Right. So you've written a book as well on Sachin Tendulkar. So just tell us in a few lines what you covered, and is there another edition coming?
Yeah, my book is Sachin Cricket. Hello, Sachin.
No, it's not out yet.
Yeah. No, sorry, Dilip. The question is for Bimal.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bimal.
Yeah, my book came last year, the year when Sachin retired, Sachin Cricketer of the Century by Penguin, and the book has been worldwide distributed and has been received very wide. It has been appreciated throughout the world. Right. And the best thing was that Sachin and Dhoni both are such a humble icon of Indian cricket, and both of them they were present in my book launch, and I think that was the biggest thing because. As a sports journalist, it's journalists and players share a catch-22 kind of relationship. But on that day, I saw a different kind of Sachin and Dhoni. They knew that journalists have a different kind of profession. We have a love-hate relationship. But on such occasions, they forget everything and they try to help you as much as they can because they have been also seeing our work for the last 10 years or 15 years. And that was a humbling experience as well.
Right. Thanks, Bimal, for that. We've been talking to Dilip D'Souza, of course, about his upcoming book. We've actually flooded with messages. This thing. So let me take one, which is from the game, and then pose it to Ayaz, and then we'll close as we run out of time. Kiran Pawar asks, he wants to know how Sachin Tendulkar used to prepare for the Australia series to face McGrath, Bretley, and Vaughan.
Look,
is that a good enough question to define what one of the big challenges it could be?
Yes, look, one thing is about his preparation, which is interesting, because a lot of people defined him as a genius, and you would imagine that the genius that didn't need to prepare. And there are different players. Different players have different ways of preparing. Some may employ the visual technique, some like rest, some like to read. But I remember an occasion in Sharjah when India were playing Pakistan in a one-day game. And it was a day-night game, and I met Sachin in the morning for an interview, little knowing that he had kept awake virtually the entire night, which is what he told me. I said, what are you doing? He said, I haven't slept. I need to catch maybe an hour's sleep before the match. I said, what were you doing all night? He said, I was rehearsing how to play Wasim Akram. So I said, why? He says, look, Wasim Akram is the biggest threat. If we can see off Wasim Akram, then I think we'll win this match. And so what I'm saying is that he would get consumed by the challenge. And maybe, whatever techniques he used to employ, but there was a lot of diligence that went to his game.
Right. Ayaz, we've run out of time completely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dilip. All the best for your book. Thank you. Navneeth and Bimal and Sunandan for joining us and enlightening us on Sachin, also giving us a clear idea that we need to do much more Sachin dedicated episodes. That's all we have time for on CricketOMania. We'll be back next week. Thanks for watching.